Welcome to the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast powered by Hiscox. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. Throughout my career, I've had side hustles, some of which have turned into real businesses. But first and foremost, I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. In the creator space, we hear plenty of advice on how to hustle harder and why you can sleep when you're dead. On this show, we ask new questions in hopes of getting new answers. Questions like, how can small businesses work smarter? How do you achieve balance between work and family? How can we redefine success in our businesses so that we don't burn out after year 3? Every week, I sit down with business founders at various stages of their side hustle to small business journey. These entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope while keeping their values. Keep listening for conversation, context, and camaraderie. Today's guest is Kris Louis, the founder of Crate Audiovisual, an innovative supplier of audiovisual services, rentals, and solutions. Kris and his company are based in Georgia. Kris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sanjay. Appreciate it.
So I'm excited to have you on because I didn't tell you this before, but I used to do events as well. And so I've had to not like execute them, I'm like holding my own events. And so I've had to deal with AV stuff and disasters and all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure
so sorry to hear that.
I know, right? Like, I don't know how you guys do this business day in and day out. It's so stressful. But before we get into all of that, give us a little bit about what your background and what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started in audiovisual in 2008. I was fresh out of college looking for a job in my field, which was hospitality business. And the AV world in Orlando at the time was the only world that was hiring. As you know, we were right in the middle of a recession, and I was getting decline after decline after decline. And this AV company came in, scooped me up at a pretty fair hourly rate, took me under their wing and kicked me off. I knew nothing about the industry. I knew nothing about the mechanics. I had a decent head for technology, but basically started from nothing and worked my way up through the world of audio and the world of lighting and the world of video, and grew with that company into some management roles that took me to the Caribbean and Atlanta. And that's kind of where my time with them ended and led me to my small business.
Okay, awesome. So before this, had you done any AV kind of work, or had you been in any kind of, like efforts of doing events like this?
No, before I got that job in 2008, I didn't even know anything about that life or anything related to those components. So it was definitely like jumping into the deep end. And, I spent about 7 years with that company before launching my own thing. And sometimes I look back on that time and I think, wow, I really had a good foundation. And other times I'm like, nothing I did in that 7 years applies anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm really just sort of winging it.
What drew you to this industry of all other industries?
They were hiring. I mean, to be honest, that's the blunt answer. They were hiring at the time in the middle of a recession.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So first time being an entrepreneur, or have you been an entrepreneur in the past, like when you were a kid or anything?
It was my first time being an entrepreneur, and it was scary. I had some really lofty ambitions at the beginning. I dreamt wildly of things like an app that could connect clients with technology and sort of deliver it in an Uber style. My head was very much in the clouds. Of course, none of that panned out. And we just kept whittling away at it until we got to a business model that worked.
Yeah. Okay. So talk about that a little bit. So first time starting a business, what encouraged you to make that leap and quit and go all in on this?
Well, the company I worked for was great, but when you change regions, your leadership will change. And basically the thing that caused me to jump ship was my leadership. They put me in a new area that had just a very different set of rules and a very different set of standards compared to what was happening in other regions. And I struggled to acclimate to that so much. I was in a performance-based position, so my salary was tied to my performance. And everything that was being asked of me was sort of directly contradicting that goal. So frankly, one day I just woke up and rage quit. I sent an email. I said, I'm done. And I went and got my things that afternoon. I shook a few hands and I left the building and didn't ever look back.
Really? So you like just one day woke up and did, like, it wasn't planned beforehand?
No plan. I mean, it had been itching. It had been itching in me for a while. So it wasn't just a super spontaneous thing, but I definitely didn't have a plan. I always look back and think, I wish I had made more headway on the business before I quit. So there wasn't so much of a gap, and I had more runway, but ultimately it all worked out. But I think if I could do one thing differently, I would have waited longer.
Yeah. So you hadn't started your own thing yet until after you quit.
My own thing was still an apple in my eye. You know, it was up in the sky. I could see it, but I hadn't done anything to work on it.
Yeah. So, okay. Monday was it a Monday? Was it a Monday rage quit?
I don't remember what day it was. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, rage quit day +1. What did you do? How did you get this kicked off?
Oh, we started with a website. You feel really good about yourself when you buy that URL, Oh, I did something. I bought the domain. We started brainstorming about all these ingenious ways we could revolutionize the industry, which, like I said a moment ago, was really lofty and out of hand. And thank God for my wife, she kept funneling it down to how do we get the first dollar, And I think it took 8 or 9 months until we got the first dollar. And it was $65, which is not a very big transaction. But we were over the moon about it. Like $65. We had rented a projector to a client in our town. And we had connected all the dots and figured out like how we get in front of the client, how they find us, how they inquire, how we push out a quote, how we hassle and negotiate, and how we bring that transaction home, get the payment and get the contract signed and execute the business.
Yeah. Anytime somebody is willing to give you money for doing something, I think it's meaningful because it shows you that what you're doing is of value.
Yeah. Yeah. That $65 felt like $1 million,
Yeah, exactly. Was there any point in time then when you quit that you thought, hey, maybe this is the time for me to leave this industry and go do something else?
There wasn't. It very much was the world I knew. And I thought, if I do anything, it's going to have to at least stay in this same orbit. I didn't want to branch out and just start from scratch anywhere. So this seemed like, in a world of risk, this seemed like the safest thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So in doing this then, how did you hone in on what you do now, right? Like, was that the idea from the very beginning, or did it shift and change over time?
It was not the idea from the very beginning. I very much wanted to pursue a hands-off business model where I could just set things to automate and things would happen. But what we do today basically is very much a client-facing, direct in-the-room solution. We spend a lot of time on the ground with our clients, building, designing, executing events, and doing all their audiovisual hands-on. We have a lot of boutique clients who ask for very custom and interesting setups. We have a lot of regular clients who are looking to get the work done at a very cost affordable price. So it varies, but what I had in mind was something I could sit behind my computer and do. And what I do now is something that keeps me on the road over 150 nights a year. So two totally different things. But the way we got here is just through failure. We just kept failing. And every time we would fail, we'd get redirected a little bit into what was working until, the revenue started rolling in pretty regularly. And then it's like, well, this is obviously where we need to be.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit. Do you remember what the first failure was for you and what shift it caused in the business?
Yeah, I think the big first failure was dedicating so much time to building an app. I'll take responsibility. I got so caught up in it needs to be an app. It needs to be an app. And it never needed to be an app. Of course, I can say that now, 7 years later. But, we got so far down that road and it was a huge waste of time. And I think that's a humble reminder that you can get hung up on something and And maybe that's okay, but don't dedicate all of your efforts to just that one idea. Be open to exploring other ideas more early on in the process, because I could have saved half a year if I had just, started working on other things in conjunction with that app. When the app didn't work out, I could have pivoted more easily rather than being frustrated.
Yeah. Was there anything from that experience of trying to build that app that remains in the business now? Like, were there any pieces okay. Like what?
We always start small with any new endeavor, with any new offering or product or service. We always start small. So we won't jump into anything whole hog anymore the way that we tried to jump into that app.
Right.
We'll try it out on a very limited basis and see how it goes. And we're not afraid to walk away. Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of a small business, right? Is if you're small enough, you're always nimble enough to keep pointing in a new direction. The bigger the organization gets, the harder it is to redirect.
Right.
And we love being small so that we can redirect very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big mistakes, right, of a lot of small businesses is they try to boil the ocean. And it's like, you're not the size and scale that can boil the ocean. And honestly, right. Even big organizations cannot boil the ocean. So try to do something, try to boil the thimble, not the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's talk about like your industry as a whole and how things kind of keep changing and shifting. Like I mentioned, I used to do an event, a one-day conference. I did it once a year, and man, just pulled the life out of me. So I don't know how you do 150 days on the road and just the stress and constant. We'll talk about stress and all that stuff in a minute. But the other side of this is the changing technology. Like I look at events now, and as somebody that's done events now, I think you go in with a different eye and a different appreciation when you go to other people's events and you see those little things that most people miss. But, I think about like LED walls, right? Like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, like those were not a thing. And those are now a thing. And they've gotten even better over time, right? I've seen some walls even just recently, like the quality of the output is so phenomenal, but they require a technical expertise that you just didn't need to have 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So how do you keep up with that for you and your entire team to make sure that you're ahead of everything that's coming?
Well, really the number one thing we do, and this goes back to taking a tiny step or getting into the shallow end of the pool first, is we let our clients guide our innovation. When a client comes to us and asks for a solution, that's when we start thinking outside the box for them. When a client comes to us and says, "Hey, I want to go big," or I want to do some decor, or I want to do, in your case, an LED wall, we're small enough that we can one-off those components and find the right talent and the right product to accomplish that for the client. But then we also don't have to take on ownership of that product. So we actually don't own any LED walls. Our entire business model revolves around us owning as little as possible, actually. But we will subrent things and we will make profit off of labor and smaller items that we have in-house. But that innovation is so important because clients see it as a big part of their program and they get really attached to those ideas. So that smallness allows us to one-off something, and then boom, they've got their solution. We've booked the client. Are we passing through that LED wall at rack rate? Yes, we are, but we've captured all this other business around it.
Right.
So we're happy to innovate and we're happy to scale to new things.
Yeah.
We just do it in a very tepid way.
Yeah. So there's an interesting point that you made there. I don't think it might have been clear to everybody, but I want to ask you a question around this. So you're obviously very technical, and you've become very honed in on what your business is. And that transition for a lot of people is difficult, to going from, a technical person to a business owner. So how did you develop that expertise for yourself and really understanding the business that you're trying to deliver and what's most important, and trying to know what's most important in terms of focusing on revenue? Because like that kind of comment of passing the rack rates of the LED wall, like most people are going to be like, well, I'm just going to want to make money on everything. Right. And you, it sounds like been very deliberate about like understanding what's the most important for the business. So how did you get to that point for yourself?
Just like we said a few moments ago, we keep failing and getting redirected. So I can't tell you how many big pieces of tech I bought 5 or 6 years ago thinking this is going to be the thing that everybody wants. I remember, to give you a specific example, during COVID, when COVID started, I bought a whole multi-$1,000 streaming studio kit because I thought everyone's going to want to do this for a long, long, long time. This is going to be the future. And hybrid events are here to stay. That is for sure. But this was a really elegant and expensive asset that we purchased. And we sold it 18 months after we bought it because it got used 3 or 4 times, never recouped its revenue, never recouped its cost. Right. And it was collecting dust in our warehouse. And it also had a whole bunch of other limiting factors like usability and portability that made working with it really, really difficult. And there were just other solutions that were not quite as elegant, but way more cost effective and way more reasonable that made way more sense. So clients didn't want to pay money for this elegant solution. They didn't see the value in it. Right. They just wanted to have a hybrid event and they didn't care how smarmy or shiny it was. And that's a good example of knowing when to not buy something or knowing when to not jump in the deep end.
Right.
Because that has bit me in the butt a few times now. And we just avoid things like that at all costs.
How much of a haircut did you end up taking on the sales price of that piece of equipment versus what you paid?
I don't recall exactly, but it was a good one. It was a good one.
Yeah, just it's something that you're putting out of your mind, obviously, because you're not remembering it.
Right.
So let's talk about it. Since we are talking about money, let's talk about money for a little bit. Like you talked about the first kind of dollar that you made, the $65.
65s, yeah.
Like, how did you end up like getting the word out and then ramping, and where was revenue for you kind of year to year, and when did you start feeling good about where you were at?
I think the key is you never really truly feel good. You have good weeks and you have bad weeks, and they all sort of even out, or at least that's been my experience. But yeah, the first year, I want to say, obviously it was not a full year, but it was about $10,000 in revenue, which felt amazing at the time. Right. We came into 2018, which was our first full year, and probably did about $30,000 in revenue, which again, at the time felt amazing. We've scaled so much, but let's leave out the fact that we were only operating for a portion of the year in 2017. In 2019, things looked incredible. We were on our way to almost 6 figures, and we had accrued some clients that were doing regular business with us.
Right.
We had fallen into a groove. We had found some subcontractors. We had expanded our equipment roster and our technician roster. And then March 2020 is upon us. Right. I don't know if you know anything about COVID, but events and COVID do not mix.
Yeah. So what happened? How did you pivot from that then?
We tried a couple different things, and I'll just say right up front, not a single one of them worked out.
Yeah.
I
think
were
that's
very
you
lucky.
And almost everybody else
Right.
that was alive during that time.
We were very lucky to have some very flexible clients who wanted to go the distance with us. They did not see the doom and gloom. They said, we're just going to put things on hold. So there was no reversal of contracts. There was no reversal of deposits. So we were very, very fortunate in that department. We used that revenue to boot special COVID related events in the country. We did a Halloween event and we did a Christmas event, and we had all this technology just sitting. So we put that to use and did those events. We booked entertainment, we booked, operations, and we put up these 2 events. We tried them for a few years, for as long as COVID was sort of top of mind, and they just never were profitable. New events like that are entertainment based rarely are profitable in the first 5 years. So we didn't feel awful about it. We knew it was going to take time to build up an audience and a loyalty. But as the COVID situation got more under control and concerns about it wavered, there just wasn't a market for it anymore. So we could see the trend was going in the wrong direction. So we pulled out of all that. On the flip side, as concerns over COVID started to dwindle, we saw the events business pick back up. So it was just a perfect inverse graph of a situation. And we were lucky that whenever one leg of the business was struggling, another leg of the business was succeeding. So we really loved that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, challenges obviously all throughout. What other challenges have you faced in terms of scaling the business, and how do you think about those as you hit those?
Scaling the business is by and large the hardest thing that we do because we want to be cautious never to scale too much and overgrow. So we try to always be able to serve around 90% of the business that we are able to book, which does mean we turn away about 10% of business. And then as we see an excess of business being turned away, then we start to scale up a little bit. We're based in Atlanta. We've been scaling in Atlanta now for the past, since 2022, so 3 years. And as we scale, we notice a trend where if we keep adding to our assets or adding to our sub-vendor talent, all of a sudden we just have way more business and we're busier than we've ever been this year. Now the challenge is how can we duplicate those efforts in other cities and have that same kind of impact? But it's so challenging because everything sort of moves with client demand, and getting into a new region can pose risks. You don't want to commit to, a rental for a physical space or commit to a contract until you have the business to support it. And sometimes the business comes in spits and starts. So you have to really navigate that and know when it's time to take the plunge and when it's time to go another route and not commit to anything. So we can be very commitment averse, and that I think that keeps us safe from overindulging, if you will, in a new, whatever it may be, in a new line of products or a new contract.
Yeah. So your answer there also, I think, to me, kind of highlights another important aspect of the business, which is your team and building team culture. And in the business that you're in, this is kind of a zero mistakes, high pressure situation. When you've got like hundreds, if not thousands of people waiting for this event to happen and like microphone's not working or something. So how do you think about your team culture, and how do you foster that in this kind of situation where people are getting upset? I mean, right? Like it could be the clients, it could be your team, like whoever it is, like people are going to get upset. So how do you think about that?
Well, first of all, the AV world is full of mistakes. The best way to handle that is just to make sure the audience doesn't notice.
Right.
So we understand that technology is going to fail, usually at the worst possible time. I always tell my clients the rehearsal is going to go great, and then you're going to have a gremlin in the system in the first half hour of your show. The best clients we have all know this. They expect it, and we plan for it. So we're grateful for that. But with my team, we just try to foster an environment where we're never too hard on people. We do note our mistakes, and we do try and prevent them from happening again a second time. And we understand that sometimes even the best laid plans can go awry.
Right.
The other big thing that we do to foster team culture is part of the events business means we get to go out on the road. And that's really, really fun at first. It stops being fun after a few years. I will tell you, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to go to all these great hotels and these great cities, and I'm going to have the greatest time when I'm not working. No. AV requires a lot of hours, early mornings, late nights,
right.
Overnight turns. And I will fly to the most beautiful Ritz-Carlton in Dallas, Texas, for example, and I will never see anything but the inside of that ballroom. That said, we have started to figure out, like, if we're going to send a tech to a city to do an event, give them the option. Let them stay an extra night at the end of their program. You know, they'll pay for it out of their pocket, but we're happy to book the travel for them that accommodates their trip. So they know I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to work for 4 days, but on that 5th day, I'm going to have time to get out and see the city.
Right.
Which makes a trip like that seem a lot more worthwhile than just go and be buried in work and then leave and do nothing fun.
Yeah. I mean, you're there already and you're going to fly back already.
Yeah. Go get some In-N-Out and have a good time, you know?
Right. Exactly. So one last question before we kind of change topics. I want to stay on this for a minute. So thinking about employees and people you've got, what do you look for when you're hiring these people, and how do you make sure that you're hiring the right kind of people for your team? Is there any tricks that you've got, any questions that you ask, any behaviors that you're looking for?
We do a small test with some tech, like we put them through a few hoops technology-wise to make sure they can kind of pass those hurdles. And we do make it a little bit intentionally confusing. But what we're looking for is so that we can glean that you can read instructions, parse things out, and work around and troubleshoot to get to the end goal, which is the interview, the online interview. Other than that, the only other thing we're looking for is a willingness to learn and sort of a no ego attitude. You can tell sometimes when people have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in this industry, and other times it's just, I just want to work. I just want to make some good money. I want to find the right people. And those are the people we tend to gravitate to. No ego. They work out really well because we all just have a goal in mind of getting the job done and going home. Yeah.
Yeah. Great tip, and interesting that you're giving them confusing things, because I think probably one of the worst people that you can have on a team is somebody that gets stuck and then just gives up, right? And needs somebody to micromanage them.
Exactly. Exactly. And the reality is that we get a lot of contradictory and confusing instructions from our clients out on the road. God love them. So if you can work around my interview process, you can probably work around a client.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about stress for a minute and just managing that. I mean, 150 days on the road out of 300, that's almost, is that like, it's a little bit less than half the year. That's got to be stressful. That's got to be hard. How do you manage that stress for yourself? And also extending that, is there anything that you do to help your team manage their stress?
Yeah. We like to keep everybody well fed. You know, if a day is getting away from us, I'll be the first one to pull out my phone and DoorDash dinner or lunch for everyone. I literally have a line in my profit loss spreadsheet that says, which is like usually 4% of the top line revenue for any given event. And it's just there in case things like this come up. We're having a long day, things are getting away from us, and I got a DoorDash dinner for everybody, and it ends up being like $250. But that's one of the things that we'll do, you know, just to make it easier and know like good food is coming, good hot food. This day has been a pain in the butt, but at least we're going to have a good meal and we can sit and relax for 20 to 30 minutes while we chow down. When I'm on the road, I try to prioritize sleep. I try to prioritize getting a little bit of exercise. I try to prioritize watching content that I enjoy. I really like baseball. I really like catching up with sitcoms. Another thing that I'll do that I'm very blessed to be able to do is to bring my family with me. So that means occasionally when I'm on the road, I'll have my wife and my kids with me and we turn it into a little mini staycation, or, you know, they don't see me all day because I'm still working, but they're there at the end. I can grab dinner with them, or if I get a break during the day, I can hop over to the pool with my oldest kid. So those kinds of things are really fun, and they do put everything in perspective and make it worth it.
That's fantastic. And I will kind of highlight what you just said there about good food. When I was doing events, that's one thing that I always focused on. And I can't tell you, even to this day, how many people will tell me like they don't remember a lot about the event, but they remember the food was really good. And if you feed people really, really well, right, with good quality food, it goes a long way. Like people will forgive you for all kinds of other issues that end up happening at an event. Because they're happy that there's good food and everything. So I love that.
It's true. You're very correct.
Okay. A couple last questions for you. If there's anything that you could go back in time and do again, do differently, what is that and why?
Well, I mean, we talked about the app and how focused I was on that for half of a year. I think just to distill that down, really, I think don't box yourself in. If you're a small business, leverage that, revel in that power, stay small and use that as a pro, not a con. And always keep looking for alternative paths. Don't shut anything out too soon because you never know where you're going to find success and what business model is going to work out for your idea. Don't be like me. Don't get hung up on one thing and stay stuck on it for half a year. So if I could go back in time, I would just be more open to other possibilities sooner.
Yeah. Great advice. Okay. Last question for you. If you were talking to somebody thinking about taking the leap like you did, maybe rage quitting, maybe not rage quitting, and launching a full-time business, what advice would you give them?
If you're thinking about rage quitting, awesome. I wholeheartedly support you, to be honest. However, put that rage into taking baby steps every day with launching and growing your small business idea. And then when you've got some actual traction and you've got some revenue, even if it's just a little bit and some clients and some promise, then send that rage quit email on a Monday or a Friday. I don't care which.
That is absolutely fantastic advice. Kris, where can our potential rage quitters contact you or find you online?
Oh, I am on Twitter at Kris Meets World. That's KRIS Meets World. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as Kris Louis.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on today, Kris.
All right. Thanks for having me, Sanjay.